Hello, everyone. Dragonfire here. Merry Christmas. I'm actually recording this on Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And hey, if you don't celebrate Christmas, happy holidays for whatever holiday you do celebrate, or just season's greetings, even if you don't celebrate any holidays. It's just nice to be with you here today. And I'm happy to be with all of you guys. And thank you for watching my channel. While you're at it, you might as well subscribe to get more videos from me. Subscribe, turn on notifications, leave a comment down in the comment section, all that stuff. It does help out my channel. So share my channel too with other people. So yeah, thank you for coming to check me out. Now, recently, recently there has I have released a couple of videos onto my channel of some of my more recent professional wrestling matches. I believe both of those took place within this calendar year, so 2025. And those have gotten some great views on my channel. Thank you all for viewing those. Just to let you know, if you do want to look back at some of my professional wrestling matches, there is a playlist called Pro Wrestling, I believe it's called, or just Wrestling. But there is a playlist if you go to my channel and look at the playlist, just so you can find all your videos in that. You can also find playlists for movies and music and top 10 albums of the year and stuff like that, which I got to get back to my top 10 albums of each year um, coming up soon. I believe the next year I'm going to do is probably going to be 1978, so that's going to get added to my playlist, and then I will have every year from 78 to 91. Um, so yeah, um, top 10 albums of 1978 coming soon. But right now, we're in my series about the NBA and about my all time teams. And as a little Christmas present for you, it's time for my all time Detroit Pistons team. Now, the Detroit Pistons are actually the second oldest franchise in the NBA, if you can believe that. They started out as an independent team way back in 1935, and they competed in the National Basketball League, that's the National Basketball League or NBL, for a number of seasons before jumping ship to what we now know as the NBA or National Basketball Association, um, playing their first season in what is now known as the NBA. It was the 1948-49 season. But yeah, they were actually two-time NBL champions before ever joining the NBA, winning the championship, I believe, in 44 and in 45, back-to-back NBL champions. So just to give you like a little history of the Detroit Pistons that you may not have known about. At the time when they won those NBL championships, they were actually known as the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons, and then they dropped the Zollner part out of their name when they came to the NBA in 48. And, well, actually, technically at the time it was still known as the BAA or Basketball Association of America, BAA. But a year later it would become the NBA, National Basketball Association. But yeah, they dropped the Zollner part out of their name and were just the Fort Wayne Pistons for a number of years before moving to Detroit to become the Detroit Pistons. But we're talking about the great history of a great franchise. The Detroit Pistons have won three NBA championships. That's not including their two NBL championships. So if you did include that, it'd be five championships in the total history of the Pistons. Um, but they won their first two championships in late 80s and early 90s, known as the Bad Boy Pistons era of the team. and then they went on to win a championship in 2004 as well. Very controversial were the Bad Boy Pistons. A lot of people felt like they played dirty, and they had not used such dirty tactics, they might not have won the two championships that they did win. A lot of people also feel on the other side of that equation is that they were actually cheated by some bad refereeing calls in 1988, and had that not been the case, they might have won three championships in a row in 88, 89, and 90. But yeah, they were the champions to close out the 1980s and to begin the 1990s, um, with their two championships in 89, 90. Like I said, a lot of people feel like they really deserve to have won that championship in 88 as well. But that was not what ended up happening. Bad referee calls or not, they were not the champions that year. Um, anyway, let's get to my all-time Detroit Pistons team. Now, this was really tough to choose a greatest player for the all-time Detroit Pistons because there were definitely some strong candidates, especially from their championship years. I went ahead and picked Isaiah Thomas, who did win Finals MVP in 1989 for the first championship for the Pistons since joining the NBA. Isaiah Thomas, I did pick as my greatest Piston of all time, but it really could have gone to any number of players who were part of those championship teams or were consistent, even maybe even consistent, but not during the championship seasons or whatever. There's a number of players that really could have gone to, but I chose Isaiah Thomas as the greatest Piston of all time. And he is the point guard on my starting lineup for my all-time Detroit Pistons team. Next up for shooting guard, I have Joe Dumars, who won the other Finals MVP during the Bad Boy era. He won in 90, with Thomas winning in 89. And Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas were a great duel for the backcourt for the Pistons during the Bad Boy era. Um, they had a streak of, I think it was 12, 13, 14 seasons, something like that, of consecutive seasons of making the playoffs. Of course, the highlight came during their two championships back to back. But the Pistons were really a force to be reckoned with in the late 80s and early 90s. And Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas were the leaders of those teams. Um, Next up at small forward, I got Grant Hill. Grant Hill, I think a lot of people feel could have had a much better career. He did play with a few other teams after leaving the Pistons, but he could have had an even better career with the Pistons if he had not been so prone to injury. Um, but he was a triple double machine. He got a lot of triple doubles. There were years where he led the Pistons in like four or five different statistical categories. He was really an anchor for the Pistons in the post Bad Boys era. And the Pistons really got kind of a clean reputation. Grant Hill was known as one of the cleanest and nicest players in the league. Really a shame that injuries derailed his career. A lot of people looked at him as being a possible like next Michael Jordan. Um, Came along in the time when Michael Jordan was already winning championships, and a lot of people looked at him as a future great player in the league. I would say that he never quite lived up to his full potential, but I still do have him as my small forward for my all-time Pistons team. Now, I'm going to bring in at power forward a player who played for the Pistons on their '04 championship team. So this would be after the Grant Hill era of the Pistons, and they rebuilt and made a new championship team. And I believe the best player on this team, in my opinion, was Ben Wallace, and I've got him as my power forward. He was a four-time DPOY, four times Defensive Player of the Year, Ben Wallace. And then rounding out my starting lineup will be Pistons all-time leader in win shares, their center, Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer was on both those two championship teams um, for the Bad Boys in the 80s and 90s. He was one of the dirtiest players to ever play the game, right up there with other players who have been accused of being dirty players or some of the dirtiest players in NBA history, guys like Dennis Rodman and uh, Draymond Green more recently. But speaking of Dennis Rodman, he is going to be on the bench for the all-time Pistons here. So for my bench, I got Bill Laimbeer, or excuse me, not Bill. Bill Laimbeer was my starting center. Bob Lanier, Bob Lanier, coming off the bench. Um, Chauncey Billups, who won Finals MVP the year the Pistons won their championship in '04. Dennis Rodman, who actually won two DPOYs as a Piston. Andre Drummond, Tajon Prince, Larry Frost, um, Dave Bing, Richard Hamilton. Um, Continue on to my bench. And for my final pick of the bench, right now, as I have my all-time Pistons team, this could always change in the future, like who's on the list, who's not on the list, what order they're in. All that kind of stuff could change. I've even made some adjustments to some of the teams since making these printouts for each team. But I'm going to include on my bench Bobby McDermott. Bobby McDermott, excuse me, I believe is how you pronounce his name, Bobby McDermott. If you don't know who he is, that's because he played in the pre-NBA era. But back in the NBL days, when the Pistons won back-to-back NBL championships in the 1940s, Bobby McDermott was actually a five-time NBL regular season MVP. The NBL actually had MVPs long before the NBA did. Um, Back during their 12 years of existence as a professional basketball league, um, they they had the MVP award, and five times the MVP award was won by Bobby McDermott of the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons. Now, if he had been a five-time MVP and a two-time champion in the NBA, I would probably have him as the greatest Piston of all time. But since this was technically a different league in the NBL, I'm not going to give it the same amount of weight that I'll give to the NBA years. So I do have Bobby McDermott coming off my bench. But I thought it would be criminal not to include him on the all-time Pistons team, given his accomplishments of being a five-time MVP and a two-time champion, leading the Pistons to those two championships in the NBL. So here it is. Here is my list of the all-time Detroit Pistons, known as the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons when they won their NBL championships, but the Detroit Pistons for their three NBA championships. And all the same franchise. Again, second oldest team in the NBA, has existed since 1935. And I wanted to honor some of that history. But here are some of the greatest Pistons of all time. So I made up my list. You can see I've got Bobby McDermott there at the bottom, the five-time NBL MVP, or N MVP as I have it on my list here. Um, you can see there Ben Wallace, a four-time DPOY. But all that being said, I still feel Isaiah Thomas is a good pick for the greatest Piston of all time. Definitely without a superstar the caliber of Isaiah Thomas, the Pistons do not win back-to-back NBA championships. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed uh, my list there for um, the uh, greatest players in Detroit Pistons history or in the Pistons history. And thank you everybody for joining me on this list. Again, if you like my channel, subscribe. I'm going to have all 30 teams, and you can go to the playlist where I've already done the first several teams, and I'm going through them in alphabetical order by the name of the location. So I just did the Detroit Pistons. My next team up will be the Golden State Warriors, but I've already done the Atlanta Hawks and Boston Celtics and Charlotte Hornets and so on. Brooklyn Nets, Chicago Bulls, Cleveland Cavaliers. So yeah, I've done quite a few teams already. And by the way, congratulations to the New York Knicks who just won the Cup, the NBA Cup, the in-season tournament for the NBA Cup title that they have just won in this 25/26 regular season. Won the 25 NBA Cup. Uh, Congratulations to the New York Knickerbockers on that. Um, but the Knicks all-time team is one that I will be doing in the future, so stay tuned for that one, as well as the rest of the 30 teams. I've done what I don't know how far I am. I think I've done about 8 so far. But anyway, yeah. Keep tuning in for more of these and check the playlist so you can see the entire list of all 30 teams once they're finished. All right. Thank you for joining me, everybody. Dragonfire out.